The answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Dan Crenshaw, who's a Republican congressman from Houston, Texas, as you know, recently had a town hall. And he was peppered by some of his constituents about January 6th and those who've been arrested. Not necessarily challenging people who are arrested for breaking the law, but asking him what he and his colleagues are doing about protecting the due process rights of those who've been accused. We know the stories of people who are being held without bail for months on end for trespassing and assault charges. Is that not violative of those individuals' constitutional rights? This is how that exchange went.
Mr. Crenshaw, what have you personally done to help get them out?
Look, I agree with you. You can't, and this is a problem throughout the country. You cannot hold somebody without due process and without a swift trial. You just can't. They are doing it, and what power do we have? I wish I could tell you something, that there's a bill we could pass, that we had the majorities. I wish there was.
Have you done anything to help? Is my question.
Look. Like I said, I mean, what?
You're a congressman that represents the state of Texas. Is there anything else you can do? I mean, do we throw our hands up and say, "I'm sorry"?
I mean, if I went and saw them, that would gain a lot of attention for me and do nothing for them. That's the truth. That's the truth. Hey, if you want a performance, they can give you a performance.
Okay.
I wish I had the authority to help. We do not. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you we have authorities that we don't.
There's nothing you can do. Why do we need you? Right. That's why we're going to.
Hey, I'm not a dictator, sir. If you want to elect dictators, then you wouldn't live in America.
Someone that will represent us and not give us
Let's. Truthful answers. Let's. You don't like truthful answers about what our.
Is that all that he can do, is just agree with his constituents? For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Jon Gabriel, editor-in-chief at Ricochet.com and contributor to AZ Central as well. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Good morning.
What do you think about that, raising the issue of the due process rights of the accused? I mean, in any other setting, there would be sort of bipartisan concern about that. But because these are insurrectionists, even though most have not been charged as anything approximating an insurrectionist, there is a lack of interest and probably some fear among Republican ranks of being sort of categorized as with the insurrectionists, this being election season and all.
Right, and it's a situation that a lot of Republican voters are frustrated with, because if the situation was reversed, we had all those riots and violence outside of the Republican National Convention and in different places in D.C. Over the last year, and those people were barely charged. Boy, if they were still in prison awaiting trial, awaiting charges, Democrats would be on the news nonstop trying to get them free. So I think Republicans on the Hill just need to understand what people are frustrated about is just the double standard here. We have really bad crime going on, Chicago, L.A., New York City, and then in small towns around the country. And people, offenders, are just being let go or slapped on the wrist. And I think a lot of people are very frustrated about that.
Well, here in Chicago, we have 2,300 violent criminals who are out on electronic monitoring. And our chief, I mean, this is kind of inside baseball, but our mayor wanted to put a moratorium on it, and the chief judge said no, he's going to continue with this program.
Yeah, it's just completely maddening for the average person who's out there working hard, paying their taxes, doing their best to do the right thing, and just to have this complete double standard. And then you have so many in the media, the legacy media, just kind of shaking their heads at how terrible people on the right are, and, calling them names and calling them deplorables, when all they want is, a fair shake about these things. And it's not too much to ask And for Dan Crenshaw to act like it is, he hasn't been in D.C. a long time, but he's already been there too long, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even, I mean, the double standard is one thing. You're right to point that out, but it is also the standard, like the Sixth Amendment. I mean, the idea that you have a right to a speedy trial, for example. And it seems to me that's a very good argument to make. I'm not taking a side in any particular case. I'm taking the side of the Constitution that you have to look at these cases individually, but that they need to be adjudicated with all due speed, and there's no defense for these extraordinary periods of detention given the charges in many of these cases.
Yeah, and their names are dragged through the mud as pretending it's some kind of a French Revolution all over again,
right,
when everybody knows that's not what it was. I didn't agree with the violence, and a lot of people went too far with that. But to compare that to the riot scene over the summer of last year, there's really no comparison. You know, businesses being burned down, shootings everywhere, assaults everywhere, attacking the police night after night after night for hundreds of days. You just have to treat both sides equally on this stuff. And the press, Democrats, and a lot of Republicans don't really care about the fair adjudication of these issues.
Yeah, that's a sad commentary. You wrote recently about Joe Biden, recalling Joe Biden's promise to be the great unifier, unify the country. And he has done that in significant fashion, but probably not in the way he imagined.
Right. I try to give a hand and compliment people I disagree with when I can. And I just noticed Joe Biden hasn't really followed through on any of his promises except one. He's unified the country in not really liking Joe Biden. He's been very good about that. And the latest polling, Quinnipiac and now others are following, the country is really united in disliking him. You had a situation where Joe Biden has a far lower rating among Hispanic Americans than white Americans. Wow. And it's breaking up these old categories, a trend that we saw start during Trump. And it's continuing now. People just see a guy who's not doing his job and not caring about the basic issues that Americans care about. And I think people are very, very frustrated. I think it's strange that the media has been so asleep on it, thinking, oh, no, the people will absolutely love this Build Back Better boondoggle and this bizarrely named Voting Rights Act, when the American people are concerned about empty shelves, high prices at the gas pump. These are the things we care about, and he's not paying attention to them.
Well, do you expect to learn anything today when he has his 10th press conference here in his presidency?
Oh, boy. Shockingly, I do not expect to hear a whole bunch. The frustration that this White House does is they always describe everything as a communication problem. This is not a communication problem. You're not doing your job. You have to focus on what people are actually talking about. And they aren't talking about what, salons in Manhattan and the nice neighborhoods of D.C. are talking about. They're talking about these kitchen table issues. And unless you focus on those for a very long, sustained amount of time, people aren't going to listen to you. So I think it'll be more of the same window dressing and clever phrases, and it'll be forgotten in a day.
So then what's your perspective on the play that the Democrat socialists are making here? I mean, they see the same poll numbers, the increasingly incendiary rhetoric. There's been no sort of ameliorative tack. It's just getting more and more demonstrative, more and more demagogic. And so what's the play here? Is the play they think that they can't address those issues that you just described that people are primarily concerned with? There's not much they can do about inflation or are willing to do. And so they have to come over the top with a simple binary of you're either for saving our democracy from Trump and the insurrectionists like I am, or you're with Trump and the insurrectionists, and that's the choice in November.
Yeah, I think it's the only play they have because in the facts, their policies would not work. They're just trying to do as much of a power grab as they can while they hold the majorities. And then they're going to pretend to be all shocked, just like they were when they lost the governorship in Virginia. People do not like what they're doing. and the press is unwilling, the CNNs of the world are just completely unwilling to warn them, hey, you are going off the cliff here. They just don't seem to care. So I think they're just trying to grab as much power as they can while the iron is hot.
He is Jon Gabriel, editor-in-chief, Ricochet.com, and contributor to AZ Central as well, Arizona Republic. John, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I drive a truck for a living, and I'm gone every week all week long, and I know I don't eat right, and it really helps a lot.